Today we're going to be talking about Mac versus PC, which has been a contentious topic for the ages. Going back for the last 20 years, there's been commercials of, I'm a Mac,
I'm a PC,
and vice versa. But a lot of the roots are the same, a lot of the development is the same, but there's some really cool things that are happening. My name is Adam Jones. I'm a digital navigator with the Whitman County Library System, but then also a marketing technologist.
I'm Preston Snyder, also with Pullman Marketing, and also a digital navigator. And when I'm not navigating digitally, I am also a pay-per-click advertiser engineer.
Yeah, and part of our heart for today's session is to really demystify the products available on the market. There's a lot of, is this product better? Is that product better? Or what's this? What's that? And we kind of want to push that away and just kind of help you figure out and determine what is right for you and for your household. We want to be able to ensure that patrons are able to make informed decisions, especially purchasing decisions at some of these sometimes higher price points. And we want to assist in that purchasing to make sure that that item meets your digital navigation goals or needs.
As a disclaimer, we are not going to be talking about Chromebooks or anything to do with Linux today. However, if you do want to learn more about these, you can watch our Chromebook video provided in the description in post.
So today we're going to be going over some key differences between the two, their ecosystems, some kind of baseline shortcuts that are really, really helpful, can save a lot of time and efficiency. And then a little bit of why, where, and when to purchase these devices and what kind of things you can be mindful of moving forward. And one of the number one things when it comes to the key differences is price point. And now computers can range anywhere between $200 and $2,000. Mac and PC have done a good job trying to be fairly balanced in that. Though Mac kind of skews a little bit higher, their entry-level MacBook Air, which is on their M1 chipset, they do have an M2 chipset at a little bit higher price. It comes in at about $1,000 or $999, and these keep their value. If you were to pick it up today and then try and sell it in 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're going to be able to sell it between $500 to $700. These units keep their value and they do just work and run. Now PCs, they do come in, this is what we call a comparative model at $799, and this is the Microsoft Surface 4. There can be some delineation and some differences that can occur. You may not be able to resell the Microsoft Surface at that same price point. It doesn't maintain its value as well. But if you're looking, saying, should I buy a Mac or a PC? Which one's better, faster, stronger? Which one's cheaper, more expensive? It kind of depends, but they can kind of meet each other right at the middle and be within a couple $100s. Now, if you're looking at a PC laptop that's in the $200 to $400 range, do note that there are going to be compromises that have been made. There's going to be specs that are going to be lower tier. There's going to be smaller hard drives, so you can't store as many photos or videos. Whereas these two units are what we would probably recommend as a baseline. And Apple's always been really pretty good about that, of this is the unit that the average person needs to meet their daily email, browsing, and creative tasks. A couple of things to note with that is Apple has been able to do that through proprietary systems. Their most recent chipsets are actually the ones that they've been using in phones, but they've been able to innovate it so much that they're radically different than what any PC has been using. Up until the last few years, Apple has been using Intel Core processors, which PCs use as well, but they found that they were able to innovate off of what they've been developing in their iPhones and tablets into units that are really pretty powerful. The only problem is, if there's ever a problem, it can only be fixed in an Apple store or by an Apple certified dealer, which getting that certification can be rather difficult. In the PC world, because a lot of the parts are on the market, available and accessible, a lot of things you are able to fix and adjust or even upgrade on your own. Whereas in the Apple system, they have it set with what they call TPM, security chipsets, that prevent people from tampering. If things are tampered and it triggers a sensor, it will lock the device so it is unusable, unless of course it is being performed by an Apple store. So there are some things to keep in mind. Do you want something that you go one place and they always fix it for you? Or do you want to try and DIY? I like both paths. The operating systems are also a little bit different. Now, while they can say that Apple and PC/Microsoft products have been kind of the same and were developed out of the same, there's a lot of legends and myths out of it, Apple has continued with this Unix-based kernel, which originated out of AT&T in the 60s and 70s. Really cool history items. The code works with the hardware better. Whereas when you're using Microsoft Windows, there's layers of abstraction that make it a little bit more user-friendly. Once again, which one is better? Well, it kind of depends. And it depends on those use cases that we're going to get into. The nice thing with a lot of the PC hardware is that you can use Windows, you can use Linux, or you can even run server-grade things. The hardware is much more accessible to different operating systems, where on an Apple device, it has to be Apple software. And when you buy your first Apple or a PC or /Microsoft operating system, there is a stark difference in how applications are handled. In the Apple world, there's a lot of really cool software pieces that Apple has developed to work really specifically on those units. Just like the Compass or FaceTime, where you're able to do video chat with friends and family. They have GarageBand for kind of developing music, which is really fun. iMessage, which integrates with your iPhone so that you can send text messages from your phone, your tablet, and your computer, and it's all synced together. Of course, they have a mail app and a web browser named Safari. There's a lot of really cool software pieces that Apple has integrated to be highly functional and available. On the PC, they've gone a little bit more on the utilitarian route, where one of the best features really is the notepad and the calculator. I use those on a significantly regular basis. But of course, you do have your web browser. You do have a baseline mail app and photo apps and some other items. But to do anything truly productive, you do have to purchase Microsoft Office. Where on the flip side, in Apple, they do provide you a text editor and Keynote and other software items that help you get along pretty well. In terms of downloading additional applications, Apple has really tried to lock it down so that if you just go through their app store, you can download whatever you need as long as it is an authorized app through the App Store. So they're doing a lot of third-party validation and verification that these are safe and good apps to use.
There are also other downloads that we find for specific programs. We see these with high-end use cases through Adobe apps like Photoshop, or things like Affinity and very specific creative uses where there is a version for Mac, but it has to be specifically made and packaged for Mac, as opposed to you can't, if you try to download the generic Windows download on your Mac, you're just going to run into problems. It's going to reject it, and you're not going to be able to move forward with it. So even if you do get access to third-party things, they have to be very carefully and specifically packaged.
And in the PC world, they've gone a more decentralized route, where you do have the Microsoft App Store. If you want everything to work with your mobile device, you're going to have to work with the Google Chrome extensions and the phone app available. They also have Xbox Live apps that they're trying to integrate between your Xbox and your desktop system. And of course, you can download pretty much anything from the internet and install it, which we definitely do not recommend downloading and installing miscellaneous pieces of software as needed on the fly.
In post, see our video on apps and scams in the description.
Ecosystem. This is where we get the kind of nuts and bolts of the service offerings.
So one of the biggest things that Apple devices and Mac has as far as storage goes is iCloud. So generally up front, if you get a device, you do get about 5 gigabytes free across all of your devices associated with Apple. When you register the device, they will make you create an Apple ID, and that can transfer to anything, your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac. You can use them interoperably. You can use the same storage system by default that should be on all of these devices, which makes it really easy if you are doing a lot of cross-platform. I took a picture on my phone. I wanted to do an edit with an app I have on my tablet, and I want to upload it on my Mac. It actually makes it really easy to transport the file from place to place. And of course, it is a subscription service if you need more, which generally, inevitably, you will need more storage. And that can go from 99 cents a month for an additional 50 gigabytes all the way up to 2 terabytes of data at about $10 a month. And then, which has been introduced recently, iCloud Plus, because everything needs a plus plan now, can be shared with up to 5 family members at no additional cost per user, and it's all baked within the plan's subscription pricing. What we additionally see with iCloud is that it does carry some storage capacity within most of Apple's other applications. So if you have a note that is shared in your Notes app, you do have the ability to save that in the iCloud. Your photos and a lot of devices by default will have a backup saved in the iCloud. Anything from your reminders, custom emails, your contacts even, anything you were to do in Keynote, and one of the most clever ones is your Find My Device app will have a backup of that data that you have the ability to save in the iCloud. And then with things in your iCloud Plus, you do have the ability to use and manage custom email domains and the ability to hide your email, depending on what you're trying to do. But it's very complex, but nice that, again, even if you which happens often to all of us, oops, I dropped my phone, I need a new one, what do I do with everything? Generally, they try and back up as much of your data as possible to iCloud. So all you have to do is get a new phone. They will import all of your settings from iCloud, and your stuff is restored. And that's how you go from device to device. Now, we keep going because there's just so much. Again, we already talked about the storage limits a bit, where you have your tiers of 5 to 50 gigabytes, 200 gigabytes, up to 2 terabytes. You do have the ability to upgrade to the Plus at any time, which comes with, you do have the ability to opt into HomeKit, which comes with a home security camera system to integrate literally everything all together. When we talk about centralized applications, iCloud is the epitome of what a centralized software system looks like. And once again, your family sharing ability with up to 5 members, all having access to all of this data together, which you do have the ability to limit who gets to see what. So if you're sharing with parents or parents, siblings, children, whatever it may be, but some people get access to something, you do have the ability to pick up and utilize those settings as well. Now we move on to Office. Microsoft Office 365, which contains your suite of apps, including Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Outlook for email, Microsoft PowerPoint, all of these essential applications that we're all generally familiar with. To get a subscription to Office, they're generally priced and will prefer you to do annual-based subscriptions. You do have the ability to do monthly, but for something that you're going to be using all the time, it is generally cheaper to just opt for an annual subscription, which starts for personal at $69 a year. Family, which is and include up to 6 people, is going to be $100 a year. And then for business, you get to shift more to the monthly costs if you are using this for work, or you are a business owner starting a business. Things to look at is your basic plan at $6 per user per month. If you do the standard plan with additional features, It's going to be $12.50 per user's month. Your premium, $22.50 per user a month. And then if you just want the Microsoft 365 apps themselves, which is if you just want access to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that's going to be $8.25 per user per month. I don't know if you, our Microsoft partner, would like to elaborate more on that.
Yeah, there are some differences in the tiers. When we look at $6, $12, $8.25, they can kind of all be pretty homogenous at the end of the day, but really what you're paying for is storage and app accessibility. Between standard and premium, there is a difference in the feature sets. That being said, an average home user on the day-to-day does not need the premium features. There's been use cases in our business that it is rare that we use a premium feature item. And we only notice that because, when we're doing troubleshooting or other assistant support, these options are either there or missing. And so we notice it, but maybe once a year that I've used one of the quote unquote premium features of the apps. And when we talk about apps, we're talking about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, of course, that OneDrive storage, and then that syncing that occurs across the board. That additional storage is really huge to be able to have 1 terabyte of personal storage. But once again, are we going to actually be using all of that? And sometimes it is better to share it across the family.
Now, some of the feature sets that we do see is that you can use these applications on up to 5 devices at once, which again, if you are doing that cross-platform, I need to get it from my phone, maybe check something on a tablet, I need to get it to my computer, I need to get to my work computer, and I need to share it with whoever else's phone. It can be very helpful to not be locked down by a licensing error that may happen. And the other thing about it is because the application suite is different from the PC itself, you do actually have the ability to have this work on PCs, Macs, Android phones or tablet devices, iPhones and iPads, and the other assortments of tablets. If you are able to put it on a device, which is just about all of them, you are not limited by what the operating system is. It's just how well the specific application works. So if you need to get a PowerPoint from your PC to a Mac device, you can.
And that being said, one of the beautiful parts of it is maybe you have a desktop computer at home and you take a laptop on the go. If you are logging in with the same ID and credentials and the same Office 365 service package, it actually will sync your documents, your photos, and your settings across the devices so that you're not always having to copy and paste things across. You're not having to use a thumb drive to take it over to the other device. It provides a really seamless experience.
Now, briefly, we'll talk about phones because more and more our cell phones do play an important role in our general use case for other standalone devices. So if we talk about the iPhone, which has a lot of these features, the ability to access SMS text messages and FaceTime on multiple devices through a desktop, laptop, or iPad, depending on where it's been installed, it is incredibly friendly to other Apple devices. It is far easier to start a video chat through FaceTime from an iPhone to iPhone than to attempt to set up another third-party video chat from that iPhone to Android. And even texting, Apple for years has run into issues of it will default to, I'm going to use the Wi-Fi instead of data if you message another iPhone, or if you run to Android, all things are applied, and then file transfer and other things, the quality is generally not retained. And that is kind of on purpose to make sure, well, everyone in your circle has to have one device. Clever marketing, of course, we appreciate it, but not always. Another thing is that because they play well, we've talked about this a bit before, but a lot of your applications and standard ability to access, especially work files and things of that nature, is really easy if you need to get things on your phone for whatever your context is. You're looking, you're on break, you're out of office, whatever, I need to check this. You are no longer landlocked to a computer device, you now generally have the ability to share things to your phone to make sure like you can get things where they need to go. On Android, you are unable to have access to different system apps per device. It's a little more locked in some ways, like there is no FaceTime equivalent, there is no iMessage equivalent that works quite in the seamless way that Apple does, but there are, of course, many clever and cost-efficient workarounds.
And one of the points that we'd like to make with this is that it's not necessarily that Androids are PC devices, it's that they can pair. There are ways through Android, depending on the unit, to be able to send a SMS text message from your desktop through your phone. It is really, really janky to do. It's really weird, and the setup is, once again, just not seamless. One of the things that I appreciate most about Facebook Messenger system is that I can respond on my phone or from a desktop web browser. But that's kind of annoying, whereas in the Mac iCloud world, you are just able to have that seamless messaging experience regardless of device using their own services.
Yes. And then just think, when we think about third-party apps like Facebook is very good. It doesn't matter what device you're using, you can go from one to the other. Things like Canva as well, if you're creating, it's not about the device you're using, it is about Canva itself. It is about Facebook itself, which has made, regardless of device, very good user experience choices all the way through. So now we're going to move on to a lot of the shortcuts on your Mac and PC devices. But before we get into that, often what we'll see on laptop devices is touchpads in lieu of mice. Instead of having a secondary accessory, having something that is often built into your system, in that there are a lot of gestures. Generally, they're very similar. There are a few ones that are either inverted or they're just simply not exactly the same, but they're close. So to be aware, but some things universal. Pinch out to zoom out, your pinches to zooms, your swipes to zoom up and down. With enough gesture, you will eventually get to where you need to go. Some of that is experimentation. But the thing to know about touchpads and usage of them is that they are the things that are attached to your device. So if you often are typing, pressing your spacebar and accidentally moving your mouse, it's a really big and probably really effective trackpad. Another thing, if you like that similar ability to move around and use gesture control, which in some cases can be a little more efficient, there is a separate accessory that is a trackpad. So it's essentially, you would have that same functionality, but it sits over here. And it's very similar to the touchpad. And you do have the ability to connect and install the device without extra software most times. If you're not native to it and it's not something you figured out, it does take some time to learn. And at the end, it is just a nice accessory to know based on your personal preference.
And we do see the use case actually in terms of ergonomics, where if you're able to just have your hand there and you're just swiping or gesturing, there's a lot less strain on your wrist versus when you're using a mouse. And so that this can be a nice alternative for those that are and really enjoy the experience of a laptop, but maybe relegated to a desktop environment. So then the trackpad is a nice alternative. And there are versions for the Mac and for the PC, just for that enjoyment, but then also for the ergonomic purposes.
So on the touchpad, some of the navigation gestures that we typically see is that generally if you do a single click, sometimes there's a button, sometimes it's just a tap. That will be your left click. If you do it using two fingers and you're able to get two inputs at once, that's generally the right click. Alternatively, on a lot of PC models, there will be a left and a right click button that can take this away, but one for left, two for right. To scroll up, this is generally where we see some convergence of, for some people, sliding your fingers up will cause your screen to scroll up. If the controls are reverted, scrolling up will make the screen go down, and likewise to scroll down. Either it will work when you scroll down or the controls will be reverted. Depending on the model and your preferences upon setup, you do have the ability to customize this as well. So if you are in the mood of I scroll down to make my screen scroll up, often you have the ability to go into settings and to change that directly. And of course you have your zoom in to stretch your fingers outward. Okay, let's get in closer this way. And then to zoom out, you do your inward pinch to show open windows often and get to where all of your tabs and programs are. You take 3 fingers and do a swipe. And then after you do that, to swipe between those open windows, you would keep your 3 fingers and then swipe left or right to be like, okay, I'm going to shift here. And this is not the end-all list of gestures. There are other gestures laptops have. Sometimes they're inverse, and it's just often operating manual will have your full list. These are also things that you can look up online if you're unsure. It takes practice, knowing your preferences, and of course checking your settings to figure that out. Keyboards, in a very funny way, this is another thing where we get into open versus closed sources. What you get on your Mac is usually what you get. They're built for a very specific use and a very specific purpose. So the design, the model, the keys of your Mac, you get what you get, and it works, it's functional, and it's specifically built for the design in mind. For PC, you have the ability to take a nice tried and true standard practice keyboard, or there are so many different models of keyboards depending on what your ergonomic preferences are, your sound preferences. If you like the sound of clicking or you despise the sound of clicking, there are different models made for you. One of my favorite hobbies I've seen recently is people that make custom keys for their keyboards, replace them all so you can make a work of art that sometimes only you know where the Q key actually is, but it's there and it looks beautiful. And then, do you want things a specific way? Do you want a keyboard that has a built-in function key? Do you want one that is larger? Do you need your 10-key number pad attached? Or do you want it as a separate accessory? Do you prefer a condensed model or a more large model? Do you prefer something flat with barely any lift to it that's portable you can take on the go? Do you want something that maybe should move only when you clean it and not 1 second more? With keyboards and PC models, it is wide open. And especially in the era of 3D printing, it is your heart's desire you can make happen. And there are some incredible and ridiculous models of keyboards that you can find of all sorts of price points, anywhere from something on clearance for $5 to I paid $3,000 for a keyboard and I don't know why.
And when we're looking at, what should you purchase? Well, it depends. One of the things that we'll always recommend that you do is go into a store and just try out the keyboard. Try out the keyboard on a PC. Try out the keyboard on a Mac. That actually might be a determining factor. Maybe you love everything about a Mac, but the keys just don't feel right. Or vice versa. You go in and you say, wow, why do all the keyboards feel different? I just want the same keyboard experience everywhere I go. Well, then a Mac might be a little bit better consideration. So it's those types of things, those tactile responses of how am I going to use this tool and does it feel right for my use cases?
Speaking of, now we go into generally why, where, and when to purchase either of these devices. So the biggest question, of course, is what is best for you? And similar to keyboards, our favorite answer, it depends. We have to be very considerate of your specific lifestyle choices. Are you trying to be more on the creative side? Do you need a creative suite? Are you trying to be focused on productivity? Is it something you use only to check things like social media and the news? Or is it something where you are actively on your computer 8 to 10 hours a day doing things? You have to consider weight preferences too. So we talked about, is it something that needs to be portable, on the go? You need to grab it all the time and move it, so you don't want some heavy thing. Do you want something powerful but can stay still? So you get a tower and a full stationary desktop build. You also have to consider your power versus your battery. If you want something that is absolutely incredible, can do a lot of things, and has a high power output, the battery on it is probably going to be terrible and not last very long. Do you need something that doesn't do a whole lot of stuff? Again, very minimal responses, but you get your productivity done. Then you're probably going to have something that has exceptional battery life, but will struggle on performance when you're trying to do more powerful processing things. Another thing too, your screen size and ratio. Do you want your entire life to feel like it is, in fact, in widescreen? Do you want something that's more square? Do you want something that is similar to a television? Or in a lot of cases, if you have a smart TV, do you want to use that for your monitor?
And some things to kind of, as we roll through this list, there's a lot to consider, but there's also resources that can help you determine what's going to be best for you. Like when we say, okay, well, is it going to be for creative or productive? Well, take a look at your applications. One of the use cases that we've run into is that for some of the Adobe systems, for photo editing and video editing, sometimes it can be more stable inside of a Mac environment. On the flip side, we've noted that for Excel, when you're using 40,000 rows in Excel, Apple actually does tend to have problems with it. And so, okay, well, is the application, the thing that I'm going to do every day, does it perform better in one environment than another? And those are easy searches to go on YouTube and see, hey, let's benchmark these against each other. When we talk about weight, there's a lot of variety in weight in both worlds. Now, the MacBook Air is really, really pretty light. But then if you're wanting something that is just unbelievable, you might consider, LG Gram? LG has made a product that, it just feels like a piece of paper. It is unreal in how light it is. But if that's not a worry and you need a little bit more performance, okay, well then maybe we can go up a couple pounds. You'll actually be able to save a couple $100 as you do that and find something that works. That being said, if you're worried about power versus battery, Apple does pretty solid between it. You're able to get good lifelong battery performance out of things and decent power. Whereas if you're trying to do that for a PC and have just a 20, 30, 40-hour battery pack, you're going to be carrying a 40-hour battery pack that's going to be exceedingly heavy. But does that fit your use case? Are you in an environment, especially in this rural community, where you may need to go an entire day or 2 days off of a battery? And there may be other options. There may be portable battery packs that you can consider, but then that is one more thing for you to carry.
Yeah. Do you want to think about and meticulously plan? You know what you're going to do, and you need to build out your application suite for it. PCs are often somewhere where you want that customizability. Do you not even want to think about it? Want a set of tools that are reliable and you can use? There's a case for both, but again, if it's more on the creative end, I want to do something where I can make music, edit photos, edit videos, and send it everywhere I need to go. A Mac is probably going to be more in your lane. That said, another thing that we often talk about with use case is inputs, which is a huge thing with a lot of variety. Notably and almost infamously on Mac is that you really don't have that many ports, even on the larger models. You get what you get. There's not a lot of room for accessories. It's what you get is what we give you, and that's kind of it. Whereas on others, especially in the PC market, for a lot of people, if it's a PC model that doesn't have a lot of inputs, that can be a red flag, I'm going to go somewhere else point, because of how accessory dependent some laptops can be. You run into a point where if I want my specific mouse, my specific keyboard, I need to put in a USB or additional storage, and I need cables to connect to additional monitors. That's already 4 or 5 different ports. And if I want something that is modular in nature, where I have a home desk at home that has all of my accessories that essentially make it a desktop computer, but then I also need to be able to remove it, and then I'm going to go get coffee and work on my stuff. You need that ability to function, and you need quite a bit of input ports. Likewise, if you have a gigantic desktop that you just need every accessory for, you're going to need to find one that has as many inputs as humanly possible, and usually there's a price point associated higher with making that happen. That you can, but it does get expensive.
And even in that consideration, when we look at video output, if you see one of our other videos that talks about basic computing and the different cable types, you may have a monitor that works perfectly, but might not have a port that fits your Mac or your PC. And so when you're looking through that purchasing, double checking the compatibility of VGA versus DVI versus HDMI versus DisplayPort versus USB-C, there's a lot. And so when you're purchasing a unit that may or may not have the ports, you may have to get additional adapters. And so when we say, hey, what is best for you? Well, it still depends upon the lifestyle and the devices and the considerations that are unique for your place right now.
You have an incredible amount of control in this decision. That said, if you are looking at Mac, the best place that you want to go is the Apple Store. Up front, everything is there. They have the full suite, whatever devices you need, specific accessories, it is all there. Additionally, the help you get and the support you get, which is all readily available, everyone there should be certified to handle and work on your devices. They are generally also almost always the only people who are able to work on those devices and to make those upgrades. So if you need help or general questions, you are kind of locked into their ecosystem. If you go into the store as opposed to online to kind of see and test, which in a lot of cases you should,
yes,
you may run into the risk of prices being higher up front, and the fact that if you are on the floor talking to a salesperson, naturally upselling is something that will probably happen, so be aware. Oftentimes, are there good pairings that are good for your use situation that you should be upsold into? Probably. Always goes back to it depends, but being cognizantly aware that if you are in a sales situation, sales are going to try and happen. It also can be confusing if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, and you're kind of walking in, well, what ifs and maybes and exploring, getting a sales answer as opposed to a technical answer. You are doing a dance when you walk in. The other thing, of course, you're locked in. If you need any hardware repairs, it is done in the store. If anything happens, if you're lucky, you're going to be talking to the same person all the way through, which can be a great thing. If you have a good relationship with your repair person, fantastic. But if you need somebody to come out to you, or this affordability thing, there's a lapse in warranty, that's where you may run into specific issues.
The other place that we do recommend for Apples and PCs is Costco. And the old adage is location, location, location. Well, with Costco, it's all about that warranty. Not only are you getting the device warranty from the manufacturer, maybe also getting an additional warranty that's upsold on site, but that Costco warranty, especially in terms of computers, in case something ever breaks, happens, they'll just take it back. And that is one of the most anxiety-reducing, reassuring things that you can have when you're making these types of purchases. And I have seen at times where that MacBook Air price point at the Apple Store is $999. Well, at a Costco, I've seen it at $750, $800, $850. Sometimes you're able to get a better price point at a Costco location. That being said, you are losing out on that support after the purchase. Maybe it is a PC. They're not going to be able to help you in the long run. If it is an Apple device, you can still take it back to an Apple store for support, but those options may be limited. The nice thing that I really appreciate, though, is that you're able to go in and feel both devices. Well, maybe you do like the trackpad of this unit, or maybe I like the keyboard of that one, or wow, actually this one is really light, or well, maybe not as light as the other, but this fit, I can handle this. And so then you're able to ensure no regrets with the purchase. The other item is you're able to explore without associates. Sometimes, as helpful as store associates can be, sometimes you just want to explore on your own. And then when you have questions, go and seek that assistance. It provides you a more open shopping experience. When we look at other big box stores, which can be absolutely wonderful, they sometimes will have a lot of brands and a lot of options available, and that can be a little bit confusing. These two might be the same price point, but this one says this one says that. What's better? And not every store has sales reps who are fully trained to understand the nuances of every device. That being said, though, you can sometimes find a better price point. You won't always have the support, especially if you are buying a PC, except for Geek Squad services at a Best Buy. They are pretty good about having that support, but usually it's an additional paid amount or additional warranty. And that can run anywhere between $200 and $500 a year for that warranty, but sometimes it is nice to just say, hey, here's my computer unit. I don't know what's wrong with it. Please fix it. Staples also does have those types of services and support available, regardless of where it was purchased or how it was obtained. Another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the SKUs, so the serial number IDs on the devices, can be lower quality units. Walmart over time, I think, has gotten better at this, but there are still some cases where if you buy a Samsung unit or a Dell, they will have models specifically earmarked and tagged as Walmart units versus what may be considered a full OEM unit. The other thing to keep in mind is while we do love buying on Black Friday, and I got through college completely with Black Friday equipment. I love Black Friday. Sometimes what they've adjusted is that it is no longer clearanced items. They are producing short run of laptops, desktops, monitors without the full manufacturer specifications, manuals, and sometimes those warranties can actually be a little bit harder to cash in on. And because they are a short run product, that means that not everything has been tested fully. It is a non-standard manufacturing process, which means that it's more likely to break in the long run. But if it's at such a price point where, I can afford for it to break in a couple years and then upgrade to a better unit after that point, hey, that might be what's right for your family or household. It's just something to be aware of.
So a lot of these do end up being fantastic buffer units where I need something, or even I don't know what I'm looking for yet, but I don't have time to think about it. I just need to get back in action, or I need to get started on something. Let's go here. There's a great sale. Fantastic. It is a great technique, but it's probably not the thing you should be looking for that 4, 5, 10-year view in mind. So you may not get that far.
And in terms of pricing and when to buy, it always depends. A lot of manufacturers actually have a financial year that's different than our annual year or even school calendars. Some manufacturers will have their operating year starting in April, which means a little bit before April, they're going to be trying to clearance everything out to make their books look a little bit better. The other thing to keep in mind is if you shop around retail stores, there's always going to be those 1 or 2 or 3 last units that are going to be clearanced and maybe better times to buy. It might be the exact same price somewhere else, but we've been finding better deals in local retailers clearancing out the last couple items than in online. for the exact same model. So there are just a couple of things to keep in mind. That's what we had for today. Thank you so much for attending and taking the time to join us today. This video has been recorded and it will be available on YouTube. But if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to unmute your microphone, hop on, talk with us, or if you do want to use the chat, go ahead and type that question in the chat. We'll hang out here for a few minutes to see what options or questions may be coming through the line.
Mostly just kind of touching on the differences in, I guess, kind of innate security, because I know Apple really likes to tout that as a big reason why, I don't know if anyone's aware of the big Fortnite debacle and how they work their app stores. Like, one of their big arguments for why they lock that down is that it's security, that it's antivirus and all these things. Just a little bit about, like, do you have a kind of a quick comment on that compared to PC?
Yeah, absolutely. So the closed loop system that Apple has generally does have that ability of, it is a lot harder for third-party agents and bad actors to get in, especially with things like malware directly. And the way it happens is if you are somehow able to break a lot of Apple systems, sometimes it can be worse because it's going to be a big thing instead of like a series of small things. But yeah, with security in mind, you are generally safe. The things to be aware of on that is, and I know the App Store specifically is very good as you're downloading third-party applications, showing you explicitly where your data is going. And then especially on iPhones in particular, giving you more control of how much of this do you actually want to share. So they have been very good about security overall, and it is part of that closed loop system. So if there's a lot of things you just don't want to think about on that end, that is a good option. We would also pair that generally with best practices about password protection, two-factor authentication, and making sure regardless that your digital security hygiene is in check. Though on the PC end, especially with Microsoft, a lot of what they've done, Windows Defender and a lot of the inherent systems built into, say, Windows 10 and also, especially Windows 11, has been really security minded, where it's not a tell-all, but it is very good when we think about stopping things, or at least alerting you to something has happened. But you do run the risk of, if you accidentally click on something on a PC, it is possible that you are in a little more trouble up front. Though I know especially browsers at that point, things like Edge, have been getting a lot better. Like, are you sure you want to go here? But yeah, I'd say the closed loop system does end up being a little safer.
It does. And one of very many reasons why Apple switched to their own M1 chipset partially was because of CPU exploits that were happening on the Intel and AMD side, where there were, for a season, just news almost every week that there were problems. The main issue for security right now that we're facing is actually the Chrome browser, where extensions are being randomly installed. You might, whether it's a PC or a Mac, click a link that's wrong from your email or from another website, and an extension's installed, and then they're able to gain access through there. So even though the computer itself might be secure, the browser, because it is so highly used, will have attempts at malware and malicious actors.
Do both computers come preloaded with apps, and how can you limit that and add as you go? Which is a fantastic question, which there's a few factors in that. I would say one of the big ones is, where are you buying from? And what is it that you are buying? I know especially a lot of PC models, if we do something like you get a Walmart brand laptop, it is likely that it is going to come pre-installed with a few things depending on the promotion, who's involved, and who is selling the laptop, whether it's like Intel versus Acer versus Razer versus like Walmart itself. Oftentimes, especially on PC, it will just kind of come with stuff that we think this is nice. A lot of Windows 10 pre-builds as well will have the Xbox suite pre-installed. So there's a lot of stuff like, generally, if you get a nice pre-assembled thing, it will come with a big suite. Likewise with Apple and Mac products, generally at the start, you are going to get the full Apple equivalent up front. So it's just you will have access to the App Store to download things. You will have Safari for internet access. You will have that access to FaceTime, Mail, iMovie. Oftentimes we see GarageBand pre-installed. So I know for a comprehensive pre-built suite, generally Macs are pretty good at having something that's useful and not particularly, I think we'd call it bloatware.
Yeah.
Where it's just, it's there to serve a purpose as opposed to being there as you might need this, maybe it's promotional, but it's wasting space. You don't see a lot of that with Macs, whereas PCs, sometimes you'll have something that's rather empty. You have a browser and you have some of your essentials, your calculator, your notepad, and then you have to know where to go to download the rest of what you want, or it will have a trial of Office 365, and then after that's done, encourage you to buy the full package, or we will see a lot more instances of bloatware where, why do I have 4 versions of Solitaire on here and Xbox Live Gaming when all I wanted was something to do my Office work?
Yeah, and that in mind, like especially with manufacturers like HP, part of that bloatware is to offset the cost of the unit. They're going to be installing additional software to make the computer cheaper in the long run. I bought directly from Dell with laptop, said that the hard drive would replace the OS with newer version. There's more stuff that I needed. I wanted to avoid that. Yeah. So the only PC manufacturer that's really pretty good about that is Lenovo. They will install some of their own apps for making sure that your firmware is updated, making sure the software is working. They're one of the only ones that don't add additional software items. And even when they say, hey, we put it on a new OS, what they actually mean is they are putting on their image or their version of Windows 10 or Windows 11 that does contain the bloatware. So it is new, but it's not what we'd call a clean install. The other side of it, when we talk about managing it, if you did purchase that unit, like you said, from Dell, you can go through the add and remove features and remove the software as needed. You're always going to be able to do that. But then in terms of locking it down in the future, it's going to be what you install, or if you're worried about another family member installing items, as you add them to the computer as another account, just ensure that that user is not an administrator. As long as they're not an administrator on the computer, they have to get your password to finish that install.
And then on that, with Dell specifically, Dell is one of those that's very good at doing decent quality pre-builds that can generally answer a lot of your questions, but it has a lot of stuff on it. What we found as well, because I've had a few Dell products, is if you do go into the settings, look at all of the apps on your add or remove applications, just kind of scroll through, you will generally find a lot of that up front. And then I wouldn't, I believe some of the stuff I listed would be on a laptop specifically like that. So if there is like Xbox Game Corner, Game Suite, all of the Candy Crush, some of the stuff that's like, I don't need this, I don't want this, you should be pretty good to remove it.
Not seeing anything else come through the line. Thank you all so much for your wonderful time today. It's so fun to be here together and to assist where we can.
Absolutely.
That being said, enjoy this beautiful weather. It is fantastic out.